What a phenomenal piece of road! This is amazing! Hello everybody, welcome back then to the channel and welcome, crucially, to my new car. This is a Toyota GR Yaris. Basically what we're going to be doing today is a review of this car over a long journey. I'm driving to Wales for the third and fourth round, yes that's it, third and fourth round, good that I know what I'm talking about, of the Five Nations British Rallycross Championship.
Coming through on the inside, contact as well, opening it into the back of Vittles. Oh my goodness me, what drama on the first corner.
You're going to be joining me on my road trip. We're going to go via the Black Mountains, one of the famous roads. You might have seen it on Top Gear, the A4609 or something like that. Let's fire it up, and I just want to say I hope you really enjoy this video, and if you do, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Yeah, YouTube, yo. So we're just on the way to get some petrol in the car now, and I suppose it's a good opportunity for me to sit there and sort of talk to you about how I came to own this GR Yaris, because it wasn't, as ever with me, a particularly normal story. A friend of mine, Lucas Ordonez, who is a racing driver, works for Gran Turismo, had actually gone onto the track and driven this car when it was announced at one of the press events, I think at Estoril or Portimao or somewhere in Portugal, and said it's basically like a rally car for the roads, you've got to drive it. So as soon as they came into stock at my local dealership, I was like, right, well I've got to drive it then, haven't I? Quite clearly. Drove the car, absolutely fell in love with it over the 20 minutes that I was in it, and thought, right, well I've got to have one of these. Ordered the car, put the deposit down, etc. Then it got closer to the delivery date, which was May. I then sort of got cold feet about 2 weeks before the order was due to arrive. I kept getting updates on my phone saying the car's going to be here, the car's going to be here. And I was like, yeah, brilliant, okay. Oh, I'm not really sure if I can afford it. There just wasn't the volume of work last year just because of the situation that we found ourselves in the world. So I then phoned Toyota and cancelled the order at the last minute and said, look, I'm really sorry, but thanks, but no thanks, essentially. So cancelled the order. And then about a month or so later, I was just driving around where I live, actually along the road that we're driving along now, and coming up as a junction, and coming towards me was a pearlescent white Toyota GR Yaris, the circuit pack, on a Kent plate, and I thought to myself, I bet you that's my car. Because these are so rare, I thought, I bet you that's the car I bloody ordered. But ever since then, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I just kind of thought, well, actually, I'm getting the train up to and from Manchester for GT, so I'm not really doing that many motorway miles. So why don't I just get this as my daily instead? And by pure luck, one came in to the dealership where I had ordered mine, in the same colour, the same spec, exactly the same car. It was just a used one. It had 1,500 miles on it when I bought it. And I thought, well, I've got to have that then, haven't I? Absolutely got to have that. So this is going to be a long journey up to Wales. One thing I should mention actually on petrol is that it costs about 60 quid to fill this up, £60, and you get about 270 miles on the indicated range when you've filled it up. However, that is normally with round town driving and, you know, where you'll sort of stop-starting a lot. I'm on the motorway, obviously, in this car for the majority of today, so I'm keen to see what sort of mileage I'm going to be able to get out of the tank as we head on our way to Wales. This car is really a B-road blaster. That's what it was marketed as. You know, it's a four-wheel drive, 260 horsepower hatchback with internal combustion engines being phased out in, you know, the next 10 years or so. Obviously, we're going to lose cars like this. So I love the fact that Toyota have gone, right, well, we're going to go and make one of those. And obviously the irony is that they made it to go rallying, and now it's not even going to go rallying, purely because next year they're going to be changing the rules again. So it didn't make sense to bring this car in for 1 year. So there's a lovely irony, isn't there, about this car and about the fact that it was developed to go rallying on the international stage and, you know, destroy the opposition of Citroën and Ford, etc. But obviously it's not going to have the opportunity to be able to do that. Visibility isn't great, I'll be honest with you, purely because, as I'm sure you may have seen if you've watched some other reviews, I highly imagine that if you're watching this one, it won't be the first time that you've looked at a review of the GR Yaris. You can see that the mirror and the infotainment system, they're really close together, so there's not much of a gap between them. Anyway, more on that a little bit later. I'm now heading into the filling station, so we're going to put some fuel in the GR Yaris, and then we are going to get onto the motorway. So, yes, see you when we're on the motorway. I mention this now because I know I'll forget about it later, but the fuel filler opening button is down on the floor on the driver's side. There's no button on the dashboard or on the steering wheel or anything like that. It's a minor thing, but but it's a bit 90s, isn't it? It's not a massive thing, but if you're in a hurry, I don't know, it just seems like a bit more of a pain in the arse, if you ask me. You can now join me on the M25, the road to hell, as Chris Rea called it, and that is proved to be accurate because I've just found out that there's a 41-minute delay. It's also given me a good opportunity, whilst things are a little bit calmer, to just sort of talk about this car in a motorway environment, because as I'm sure you can probably tell by the tone of my voice and the level at which I'm speaking at in terms of the volume, it's quite loud in here, and that is why I've got one of these things. So through Lionel Richie's head, I'm going to be able to tell you how noisy this car is on a motorway environment. So I'm going to be quiet and listen to the level. See that? The level on a tarmac section, 73 decibels or so in here. So it is quite a noisy car, and there's not any sound deadening really in here. They've stripped it out to try and keep the weight as low as possible. I mean, I'm using the radar guided cruise control system, which I have to say is phenomenal. It's really, really good. I've never had radar guided cruise control. I've always had cars that are too old for it. So I'm just sat there doing a safe distance at 60 miles an hour to the vehicle in front, and it's easy. You know, I've got no feet on the pedals. I'm just sat here with a hand on the wheel, and that's even as a courtesy because it will keep me in the lanes. So, you know, I can take my hands off and to all intents and purposes do that. It will beep at you after a while if you do it, but it's just fantastic. I really, really like this system. This car is so lightweight. They've stripped out all the sound deadening in it. They've made it as light as they possibly could with that four-wheel drive system, which is bespoke for this vehicle. But they've put a decent-sized condenser in it, so it actually cools the car properly. I was thinking it was going to be like an asthmatic blowing through a straw, but it's really, really good, actually. Now, obviously, with the circuit pack that I've got in this car, there's no sat-nav that's built in. You've got Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which does work absolutely fine. For most people, that's not going to be a problem. The only issue that I've got with it is if I want to take this car into Europe, there's a possibility as of, I think, January next year that I'm going to get charged for roaming over there. Now, you might get a certain amount of data free, you might not. It's kind of up in the air at the time of recording this. Now, if it's not, obviously I'm then going to have to use my data to have a sat-nav if I want to drive this through Europe. I've got a friend, for example, who paints helmets, and I said I'd take this car to come and see him. He's based in the Netherlands, so that means driving it through France, Belgium, etc. You know, and then I might have to pay data charges, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. Let's talk about the build quality. I love the build quality of this car. I think it's really, really well put together. It just feels like it's solid, as a Toyota should do. It feels like it's really well screwed together. The i30 that I had before this was a hot hatch, and for some reason I think they set the suspension in granite or concrete or something. It was so harsh day to day. You drive it around, bum, 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 waiting for your spine to come through the top of your head. This though, for the size of it, for the wheelbase it's got, and especially given the nature of this car, the basis, the premise of it was to be a racing car, a rally car for the road, so I was expecting it to be really harsh and unforgiving day to day, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's a bit bouncy every so often. If you go over a speed bump, you're going to know about it. It's not as comfortable as my A6 was, but then again, that was like being in church by comparison. I wasn't expecting it to be. But I think it's great. I think it's really, really good how it rides day to day. It also has a wonderful rev matching system. Let's talk about the gearbox actually as well, whilst we're on the subject. It's got such a short shift, such a positive shift as well. You can change into it and it's like the action on a rifle. You know, you feel that click like that. You just know that it's gone in and it's just instinctive. It inspires confidence. The gearbox and the ride and everything that all comes together, it's all part of making that driving experience so rewarding. And I know that I'm talking to you about it whilst sat on the inside lane on the M4 doing 60 miles an hour in an average speed camera zone, so I'm not really pushing the limits. We'll talk more about that when we get towards the Black Mountains. Bit of an update on fuel economy whilst I'm here as well. I'm actually very impressed. It had, what, 270 miles or so when we filled the tank up from when we left. I've done 130 miles or so and I've got 160 miles of range left, so we've managed to do pretty well out of that. I'm pretty pleased. So you now join me in Wales, heading up the mountains into our first destination, our first stop, our first road. And I've got to say, I'm not impressed so far, because all I've done is spend the last 20 minutes driving through a bloody contraflow and average speed cameras of 40 miles per hour. So I'm hopeful that the rest of the road is going to be a little bit better than this. It's all a bit residential around here at the moment. I'm assuming as we climb further up the mountains, the less residential it will get. Look, cat with a suicide tendency. So this is part of the Brecon Beacons National Park, and I managed to find a route, which I'll put in the description below actually, just in case you're driving and you fancy it. Driving past the Lamb Hotel. I hear it's had bad reviews. Sorry. Oh, this is a bit more like it. Right. Here we go. Oh, that's a crest. Lovely. Kick it down, knock a couple of cogs into third, over the crest, on the power. Beautiful. That's more like it. Oh, look at that. Look at that. There's a lamb at the side of the road. Lambs. What an absolutely beautiful part of the world. Don't know what gear that was, but it wasn't the right one. Smell the clutch. That is outrageously good. Honestly, I cannot believe, I've never seen a view like that. Like, I've been to some really cool places in the world. I hope you can see this out of the window. I hope it's not too overexposed. But I've never seen anything quite like this. What's over that crest? I don't know. I hate to sound like a bit of a nervous old fart, but these are some hell of a crest. That's going to annoy me. Let's turn the old lane assist off. Because let's be fair, if we go over the edge, it's not going to help us much. Flick it down into the right here. Lovely, over the bridge. So I guess now's probably a good time to talk about the four-wheel drive system on this one. Well, it's the lightest four-wheel drive system ever fitted to a road car. It's bespoke made for the GR Yaris. And it's got LSDs front and rear, courtesy of the circuit pack as well. So when it's in normal mode, which we're in now, it sends 60% of the power to the front, 40% to the rear. If I flick it left and we go into sport mode, that sends now 70% of the power to the rear wheels instead and 30% to the front. So it then becomes a rear bias Toyota Yaris, which is ridiculous. And then if I change it over into track mode, it becomes a 50-50 split, which I find a little bit strange if you ask me, because I would have thought on a track you'd have wanted as much power to the rear as possible. But then again, Toyota, you know, obviously developed this car. They clearly know what they're doing. One thing I will say about the engine of this GR Yaris is it just absolutely loves to rev. It's so good. It's got loads of torque down low, and as you go up the rev range, you'd expect it to die off being a 3-cylinder, but it really, really doesn't. It's so chuckable and light, and it just inspires confidence when you're driving it. Falling rocks. There's a sign there. What am I supposed to do with that information? So we've made it to the Black Mountains. Probably about time we got on with it then. It's taken long enough. Right, no cocking about. Rev match on. It's a bit on the old treacherous side round here. What a phenomenal piece of road! This is amazing! Third, down into second, into the hairpin, flick it in. Oh yes! This is just the perfect car for the job. Fantastic. I'm deliberately not looking down to my left-hand side. I'm not a man who's generally known for being a big fan of heights. This is where the car begins to come alive though, begins to come into its own, because it's all well and good it being good on the motorway and around town, but let's be honest, this is where this car was born to dance, because now the road's beginning to open up and this is beginning to come the car. that I was dreaming of doing this in. Oh yes! What a piece of machinery this is! I've never driven something that just grips up so much. The whole of the car is just, it feels like it's moving around your hips. It is simply fantastic. Just flick it through into the left and it just hunkers down on the road. Absolutely planted. Yeah, this is the reason why we came to Wales. And it doesn't matter that I'm not Colin McRae or Sebastian Loeb, because I can drive this car and I've got a smile on my face. And I think that's the thing, is that it gives you the confidence to throw it into the corners, to have the fun with it. It gives you the confidence to feel like you're a rally driver, even though you're not. And I feel like I'm at one with the car. I can feel the chassis underneath me. It feels dynamic, it feels planted, it feels stiff. They've added so much strengthening to this, and you can feel that almost in the DNA. Right, let's pull in here. Let's pull in here and get a photo of this, because how often are you going to get the chance to see something like this in your life? This car kind of defines excess to a point, doesn't it? It's a Toyota Yaris. It doesn't need a four-wheel drive system. It doesn't need limited slip diffs, but it's a case of Toyota looking at something and thinking, well, we'll give that a go and we'll try it and we'll see if it works. And I really admire that attitude. With the likes of internal combustion engines that are going to be dying out within the next 10 or 15 years or so, Toyota didn't have to make this. The irony is that this is a car that's been built to race that will never be raced. But they took this idea, this concept, and they ran with it. Thank you so much for joining me on this video, my review of the Toyota GR Yaris. I really do hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Take care.